It's because it's Diwali here in India. For everyone celebrating, firstly, we all wish you a very happy Diwali. It's meant to be the festival of lights, and we often celebrate it with a lot of firecrackers and lots of explosions. And that is what we have in store for us this weekend when Formula One goes to Sao Paulo. I genuinely feel, Kunal, if there is a proper Diwali race, one that's full of fireworks, one that's full of light, full of action, it has to be Brazil. Every time we go here, there is always some crazy stuff happening.
And that always also means, historically speaking, I mean, it's been almost 50 years, over 50 years actually now, 51 years since we've been racing in Brazil. Interlagos, I love the circuit. I love the name of the circuit as well, and why it's
Yeah.
actually come up. And we don't have a native Brazilian driver, but of course, it is the home race for Lewis Hamilton, a country that has officially adopted Lewis and granted him a citizenship, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. Franco
That's why he's on the graphic.
Colapinto, yeah, that's why he's on that. Franco Colapinto must be like, yeah, but we are closer to Argentina than the UK is closer to Brazil. But
He would so much rather not be on the poster for this one. Seriously, knowing Argentinians, if he was on the poster for the Brazilian GP, I think, I think firstly he wouldn't be able to tolerate it, and then secondly he wouldn't be welcomed back home for the kind of rivalry they have between the two of them.
But could this actually be the Argentinian Grand Prix, the unofficial one, given how many people have just started to travel to watch Franco Colapinto race in Formula One?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's something that we were even discussing, Soumil and I, this week, because Franco Colapinto coming into Formula One has suddenly set the whole country abuzz. There's talks about bringing back the Argentinian Grand Prix back to this calendar. And it just feels like everyone's been waiting for someone from Argentina to be a part of Formula One so that we can just follow the sport a lot more closely and celebrate it. And yes, like you say, this could possibly be the Argentinian Grand Prix. A lot of fellow countrymen would probably be at the venue. So you'll see a good divide of Brazilians and Argentinians. As long as they don't get into a scuffle over football, it should be fine.
but okay, before we move forward and tell you guys everything about the weekend, like what you should expect, the kind of tributes that are going to be coming in for Ed and Senna, and also who this track could favor, what the championship battle could become like, and the few key stories you need to keep an eye on, we firstly need to say thank you because a lot of you have been listening to our podcast and a lot of you have been watching us on YouTube as well lately. And seriously, folks, thank you for all these incredible comments. And it would mean the world for us if you could share this video and this podcast episode, if you're listening, to other people who love Formula One as well, because we just love growing our tribe. And we love to have more people, A, listening in, and B, sharing their opinions and also their bold predictions. So if you want to talk to us, if you want to ask any questions on Formula One, or even just send your opinions in, say whatever you want to say about the sport, you can follow us on at InsideLine F1 Pod, and we will respond to you and also bring on some of these comments and observations on the show as well. But we need to carry on a tradition, guys, because for the last four episodes, at the start of the episode, I have been putting you on the spot and I've been asking you for your bold predictions. And this also is valid for all of you folks as well, listening and watching. We need to know your bold predictions as well. But who are we putting on the spot first time here this weekend? Is it going to be you, Sundaram, Kunal, or should I just go for it?
Go for
You
it.
can just go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm saying Carlos Sainz is going to win again. Uh, oh, wait. That's my heart speaking. My mind before the episode said Lando Norris is going to win and Sainz is going to beat Leclerc. But now that I've put it out there, I've put it out there. Carlos Sainz is going to win. Okay, you first. You next, Kunal.
That would mean the first time that Carlos Sainz has back-to-back wins, and Ferrari will have 3 wins on the trot since I don't even know when. Okay, but I will say that
2019.
since 2019, of
Oh,
course,
we're
yeah.
getting carried away. Three Ferrari wins in a row sounds wrong. Uh, no, still I'm going to
sounds
back myself.
sounds un-Ferrari like, but anyway, I'm gonna pick Oscar Piastri after 3 really questionable qualifying sessions and races and whatever is going to beat Lando Norris. That's what's going to happen. And Joe Guan Yu will continue to be the slowest driver in qualifying, something that he's probably done that at almost 50% of the races this year. I mean, in head to head qualifying battles, Joe Guan Yu is 19-1, where of course one is Joe Guan Yu against Valtteri Bottas. I think Joe is just going to, it's like this. Narain Karthikeyan, the only Indian F1 driver to finish a season and more and whatever, will always be remembered for qualifying 24th and last. There is that one stat which will never leave him. I think this is going to be that Joe Guan Yu stat, the only Chinese driver. And luckily, not a lot of Chinese people tune in because we don't speak in Chinese and they use different apps to consume content in their world. But Joe Guan Yu might just be the only Chinese driver ever in F1. But with that record of highest or maximum number of last placed finishes or last place qualifying record.
Two things. We firstly were asking for a bold prediction. This wasn't bold at all. You've just stated the facts that we've all seen throughout the season. And secondly, we are repairing our relations with China, Kunal. India is now in talks with pulling its military back, and China also doing the same. So you didn't have to. Hmm. The-
No, no, I just gave a sporting, an absolute sporting suggestion. If it was Joe Guan Yu leading the drivers' championship with Lando Norris attacking him to claim it back, I would be praising Joe Guan Yu as well. But yeah, not when you are last for over 50% of the races of the season.
And Narain didn't get that kind of standing ovation or moment with the fans that Joe did. So we're slightly jealous also. Slightly, Sundaram.
We definitely are. But while you're speaking about this, and since you mentioned Ferrari taking 3 wins in a row, which feels very odd, I couldn't help but actually go back into my database and figure out how many times has this happened recently. And this is where the start of a birth is happening live. So since Michael Schumacher left Ferrari in 2006, Ferrari has won 3 races in a row, just twice. Just twice.
No.
Yes, once in 2008. And here the
The
crackers.
fireworks are actually perfectly timed because A, it's a
Perfectly
live
timed.
stat, and B, it's a Ferrari 3 wins on the trot stat. Go for it. You're saying
Like a Luddy
2008?
itself, right? It's like a firecracker
Yes,
in itself. 3 wins in
those
a
are
row for
red.
Ferrari.
Those are red as well. But yes, so it's happened once in 2008 with Kimi Raikkonen and Massa, and then in 2019. So that was between Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc. So just twice they've won 3 races in a row in the last nearly 2 decades. And I would love to see a Ferrari win this weekend because that would mean they take a clean sweep of wins in the triple header. That they've never done that. So I would love to see that. So sensibly speaking, if my prediction is there, I would sensibly say, sure, maybe a McLaren might be fast enough. Ferrari could uh, challenge them for the win or so. But if you want to make it bold, I still feel that Max Verstappen is going to be winning at least one more race this season. I'm not sure in the drive that would that opportunity really presents itself. But since it might rain, I'm just putting a few points in Verstappen's bag, thinking that maybe this could be the track where he comes back in the rain, in the wet, and puts forward a dominant performance, wins the race.
We
That's my
should
bold
talk about
prediction.
this, because you're right. The weather forecast, as we can see on our screen, if you're watching us on YouTube, says it's going to be rainy as hell on Sunday. And the forecast for rain is genuinely there for both these days, for Saturday and Sunday, which is similar, if I am not mistaken, to what we saw in 22, wasn't it? We had rain here a couple of years ago too. We have rain here
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time, to be
All the
honest.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Sao Paulo is actually called the land of the drizzle. Okay, that's what I was reading about the city. And I think 1 in 3 days is a rainy day in November. That's just the amount of rain you get to see in Sao Paulo at this time of the year. And I will absolutely love it to have some rain and mix up the pecking order again because my prediction actually missed the fact that it's going to rain, but I will still back Oscar Piastri for beating Lando Norris. Although I'd also love to see how the upgraded Ferrari goes in the rain. I mean, they are chasing their
Mm.
250th Grand Prix win, as an engine manufacturer in Formula One, and they've never won a sprint. So they've got two chances to actually claim a win this weekend. Although I'm pretty sure a sprint race win is not counted as a win in the Grand Prix table, where it'll be the 250th win as a power unit manufacturer.
Just continuing from that stat, maybe a little bit of trivia for all our listeners and viewers as well. So
Hmm.
Kunal mentioned that if Ferrari wins this weekend, this could be their 250th race victory as an engine supplier, the most by any engine manufacturer in an F1. So which means we're currently on 249. And out of those 249, only one race win has gone to a customer team, not by the Scuderia Ferrari. Anyone remembers who's that?
Of course. How can we forget? How can we forget the birth of a legend, the birth of a four-time world champion at Ferrari's home circuit? Sebastian Vettel,
Indeed.
Italy 2008, the first ever race I watched. Can never forget that one.
Indeed, and if I'm not wrong, yes, Toro Rosso actually won a race even before the senior team won a race
Yes.
in 2009.
So Red Bull actually signed a race winner in 2009.
Indeed,
And the only
yes,
race winning driver they had in that team was the one they picked up from their junior team, and not Mark Webber, because remember, Webber won his first race in the middle of 2009. It's
yeah,
crazy how you those timelines sort of fit around, thinking about it.
And since we are now going to see Fernando Alonso in his 401st race weekend, by the way, there was an intestinal infection. The team has just released a statement.
On the
So
car.
between in no, Fernando Alonso had an intestinal infection
Ah,
in Mexico, so he flew back to Europe for treatment, and his flight back has been delayed by a day, so he won't be there for media duties. But he's going to race this weekend, 401st race weekend. But the reason why I bring it up is, of course, Dr. Helmut Marko has revealed on our podcast earlier how they had conversations with Fernando Alonso several times to join Red Bull, but Fernando said no. In the latest Beyond the Grid podcast, Fernando himself said that he had the chance to join Red Bull in 2009 and 2010, and they were waiting for him, but he chose to not go there. And it all ties into what you guys were talking of. Sebastian Vettel, who ended up winning at Toro Rosso with a Ferrari power unit, went to Red Bull and then, of course, went to Ferrari as well.
what a
History.
story.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story how it works out. But no, Fernando will be fun to watch in race 401. But before we get to all of that, before we also tell you about a cost cap breach that has occurred in Formula One, we need to tell you who we are. It's time for a round of quick introductions because we tend to forget it otherwise. We're very careless that way because we feel it's the last thing we should do. But no, I've got to be the disciplinarian here and we've got to bring us back on track. That's the four of us, Kunal, Mithila, myself, and our very own F1 Stats Guru Sundaram, the only one with a cool, catchy name among all of us. We
yeah.
need
So
a
my
nickname
first
too,
name
Kunal.
is F1. My surname is Stats Guru.
Yeah.
I don't even have a pseudonym. Yeah, that's my actual name on my Aadhaar card as well.
So in the wedding, will it be like F1 weds someone, someone, or like that's you've got to get
F1
mad.
weds, F1 weds FE maybe. F1 weds IndyCar if she's American. I don't know.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
interesting because I'm pretty sure Liberty Media is going to come and slap a legal notice on your first name, F1.
Please.
Uh,
Hey, you can't do that if your kid's name is F1, right? I mean,
yeah.
legally. If I just name my kid Formula One, what are you going to do about it? It's just their name.
Give it a shot. See if you get a legal notice and then tell me.
The legal notice will be second. I think I'll firstly get a notice from the partner. Will be like, "Are you stupid? Are you that big of a nerd?"
That'll be a better name than what Elon Musk has given his child a name. Something of
XAE3
that sort.
yeah, it's weird. That's the Wi-Fi password. That's that's odd. But okay, introductions. Let's get back. I love to introduce Kunal always because he's the man who introduced this podcast to all of us. He's the one who founded the Inside Line F1 podcast all those years ago, back when he was the marketing head of the Force India Formula One team. Today, you of course can see him here on the Inside Line F1 podcast. But if you live in Norway, or if you have a VPN, if you find a way to cheat Kunal's company and don't pay for it, you can see him on Viaplay's F1 broadcasts as the Formula One expert with a K, not an X. which is what my dad noticed, which is very cool actually. The way the Norwegians spell it. But he's an F1 expert there and also the producer for the broadcast, which is quite cool. And his work across motorsport stretches over to the field of writing as well, as he's written for the likes of Autosport, Motorsport.com, Forbes, AutoX, First Post as well. It's a very comprehensive list, and always good to be sharing the platform with you, Kunal.
Likewise, thank you. And I'm going to take the turn to then introduce Soumil Arora. Or
I
actually,
guess my name's
why
next.
don't
Yeah.
yeah, no, I should introduce Sundaram, right? The
What
man
do you mean,
behind all the
Sundaram?
cool
Who's Sundaram?
yeah. F1 stats guru. Yeah, I don't know who's
Yeah,
Sundaram.
I've never met him.
um, a doppelganger out there with a different longer name out there, which will not include a legal notice from Formula One. But F1 stats guru, as we all know him, you've definitely consumed all his stats, either legally or illegally, given just the number of people who steal his stats without credit and present them as their own. But if you consume F1 Academy, even on Sky Sports, BBC, Five Live, On the Race, and several other reputed media houses that present Formula One to you, there's a very good chance you have consumed F1 Stats Guru's amazing stats. His stats have been retweeted, reshared by Mr. 401 Fernando Alonso himself. And Sundaram is a part of the WTF1 talent roster.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It keeps getting better each time. But yes, maybe it's now my turn to introduce my brilliant co-host Soumil Arora. So you've been hearing him a fair bit right now, and you've probably understood that he loves talking and he does a terrific job at it. But he's all of 20, and he's been doing this for the last 7 8 years, and it really shows because he's done over 300 episodes of the Inside Line F1 podcast. But also beyond that, he's in and around in Indian motorsport. If there's a voice you need to hear in Indian motorsport, it has to be Soumil. So he's definitely been the voice of the Indian MotoGP race last year, and he's also been an expert, Formula E expert, that is on Sony ESPN, and he's also along with me in the comms room of the Indian Racing League and the Indian F4 Championship. We have the season finale coming up as well. So yes, he's also the lead commentator there and host for that series as well. But he's also done Supercross. He's also done a fair bit of stuff with Geo Cinema and Star Sports. So a lot of experience for all of just 20 years old, and you're going to see a lot more of him.
But fun fact, this is going to be my last episode on the Inside Line F1 podcast as someone who cannot legally drink. It's interesting that
Because
that
your birthday is coming up this next month
it's literally on race day, isn't it? Oh no, the day after. Oh, I think we're recording on my birthday next time. Oh, that's going to be. No,
on
yeah,
Monday.
that's. Yeah, yeah, we are.
There you have it.
Interesting. Interesting. No, so the drinking game jokes can no longer continue now. I can play the drinking game properly, not without the police knowing.
Legally, since
Legally.
legal is the key
Legally.
word in the first 18 minutes of this episode.
Hey, even Kimi Antonelli drove when before he was of age, right, in
No, no,
Formula One.
no, no,
So
Even
but the
Verstappen.
the racing license doesn't need the racing license age is different than the road car driving license. So for example, in a lot of countries you can get a racing license at 16, and if they make exceptions, even earlier than that.
I got my drinking license from my dad at the age of 17. So the legalities and the police can do whatever they want about that. I've got my drinking license already. But we should talk about the circuit first. I mean, let's come back to Formula One because we've had a lot of fun in the meantime, and we're going to have a lot of fun on the way as well. But Sundaram, you have been digging through lots of really important and really fun numbers for the Brazilian GP. Why don't you take us through all of them and let me know when I have to move to a different slide because there are quite a few of them here and quite a few of them with some really fun graphics that you've pulled out for all of us.
I'd love to see the slide because I can't see it right now.
It's coming on the way. Yep, there it
Okay,
is. Past the
it's on
final
the way.
corner.
But yes, so we have to talk about. So first of all, let's get the pronunciation right. It's not Sao Paulo, and I often say this every year. It's São Paulo.
São Paulo.
It's not some. It's actually São. You have a little bit of, I don't know what you say, but it's São Paulo. And yes, talking about Interlagos, I feel it's a very important circuit for Formula One. It's a very special circuit. Yes, there's a lot of history, There are lots of Brazilian drivers who've also come through the years, and it's a sport. It's a country that loves its Formula One and its drivers, but also in terms of racing. Maybe if you can move to the next slide, Samuel.
Hmm.
In terms of racing, it's very, very important for Formula One just because of the number of overtakes and the quality of racing that you see in Brazil, and it's unmatched. If you wonder why Brazil or Interlagos is the only track that's been on the sprint calendar every year since its inception, one of the reasons is the number of overtakes. Because in the first year of the sprint in 2021, we had Silverstone, we had Monza, the more historical, a more classic, and more celebrated tracks, but they didn't provide the sort of overtaking that F1 wanted to have. Interlagos, in that sense, has often produced over 40, 45 overtakes every single time, and coupled with weather as well, wet weather, it can you can get to see a lot of passes on race day. Yes, Kunal.
Yeah, and the key thing, while I know you were digging the data, the beautiful thing about Interlagos is it's always had a higher chance of overtaking even before the DRS. Okay, so
Yeah.
Formula One's been racing in Brazil for 51 years, I think 30 plus years at Interlagos, given that it's gone around and then set foot here. But that's the beauty of the circuit, that it's not relied on those super long DRS straights to pull out, good racing and overtakes. And I love the history, but I also love this fact that doesn't matter what the formula of Formula One is. The formula of Interlagos is that you will get good racing.
And it really helps that we have a tremendously long straight at the first corner. Let me pull up a graph for you to show you more about that. But the first straight is huge, and it comes up after a few really slow corners where cars tend to be bunched up. Some people can try to get as close as possible. And then there's a long run where you can slipstream so much. And come to think about it, right? There are so many opportunities at the circuit where you can actually go side by side. Like we saw in 2021 when Lewis Hamilton was fighting through the field. You can pass at the first corner at the Senna S's. You can go down the hill at the Sierra do Lago and then turn 4, turn 5, where some people take different lines. We'll get to that in a second. But there's so many places where you can go side by side. And even after that turn 4, 5 segment, we have seen a few cars go wheel to wheel with each other. Here, if you take a keen look at the right hander at turn 6 and 7, like you can literally go fighting for two-thirds of the circuit and you'll be fine. So that's incredible how the way the circuit flows. We're not going to talk about the next slide. So
I
someone very
found this, yeah,
creatively drew
yeah.
Max
I found this
Verstappen's
on
lines.
I found this on social media, and somebody forwarded it to me on WhatsApp. And my goodness, this is for all our Dutch listeners. And I know one of our listeners actually writes in saying there's a drinking game each time Kunal says thousands of listeners from a country, whatever. But no offense, this is just enjoying a good banter. That given how Max Verstappen has been driving so aggressively on and off the circuit, this is probably what his racing lines are going to look like. And they are an inspiration from 2021 as well, right? Because he's, of course, found found a way to make sure he just keeps his title rivals behind, come what may.
So turn 4, turn 5 is the Verstappen line. Turn 5, turn 7, 6 and 7 is like the Yano Trulli and Adrian Sutil
And the
line, if you
Adrian
all
Sutil
remember.
line. Yes, yes.
From 2009 as well. We've
And
seen
and
so
12,
much.
13 is probably Kimi Raikkonen. He went into the, what do you call it?
Oh
The
yeah.
old circuit, yeah. And
Yes.
then he was surprised that they'd
Got
removed
lost.
they'd locked the gate there. He's saying it's always used to be open.
So
We've
exactly, you can
seen.
rename a lot of these corners after them. But I hope Verstappen doesn't have to do this because, like I said, there's lots and lots of overtaking opportunities at Interlagos, and it always produces quality, good racing. Yeah.
But what do you mean Verstappen doesn't have to do this? The reason why I ask is if there are lots of
Hmm.
overtaking opportunities, there are fewer defensive opportunities for Max. Because given how it's been going, I think McLaren have just been quicker throughout. Which means if Max again pulls out a qualifying masterclass, which is he's very capable of, and Lando for some reason is alongside him or just around or behind him or whatever, we might just see that Lando's again going to need to overtake him. So more overtaking chances also means more chances for Max to get dirty, I guess, right?
Which is where, in my opinion, the most important session of the entire weekend is going to be qualifying for everyone. I mean, it normally also is, but if you're Lando Norris particularly, because you know Verstappen will elbow you out, you know he's going to play dirty. Maybe not as dirty as last time. We shall find out, which is also going to be a fun story for this weekend. Just how dirty does Max get? But to me, Sundaram, if I am Lando Norris, my entire focus, of course, apart from nailing points in the sprint, how can I get that perfect first lap and then we'll figure it out? Because the moment you're in the clutches of a Max or even the Ferraris, I think it's going to be a very tough place to be for Norris.
Indeed, it's going to be difficult for him because I think he's said this several number of times that he's trying to learn and he'll learn from this battle with Verstappen, and it's happened three times already. It's happened in Austria, it's happened in USA, it's happened in Mexico. Clearly, it doesn't seem that he's learned a lot because he knows the limits to which Max can go, and ultimately, it's affecting his championship battle. Max knows what he's doing. He's basically putting Norris off his championship path, and that's not helping Norris. So he really needs to put the car in P1. He really needs to put the car in pole position in the sprint and in the race if he really wants to have a good chance at the title. Because if you end up behind Verstappen, it's going to be a difficult way to get past him.
And Max has actually not been on pole for 9 races now, and this is after having 7 races, 10 races. It'll be the yeah, okay, some number, 10 races. Yeah. Which means that in about 13 races, he's just at one pole position, and this is after uh, taking pole position in the first 7 races of the year. And I love, or rather, I don't like how F1 even considers a streak from the previous year. So if you consider Abu Dhabi last year, he's actually on an eight. He has a record now of 8 consecutive pole positions, right? So Max going up there is as crucial as Lando being up there as well. Max, although is the only driver to have made it to Q3 at all the races this season, which again is another beautiful fact of just how good a driver that he is. But who's left in the title battle? This is extremely interesting because there are just 4 drivers in it now. There's Max Verstappen, 47 points behind is Lando Norris. He needs to make big inroads into Max this race weekend. 12 points on an average every race weekend. And it's easier on this and the Qatar weekend, given that more points are available from the sprint. 71 points behind is Charles Leclerc, and then 111 points behind is Oscar Piastri. And I know Soumil was heartbroken that despite winning in Mexico, Carlos Sainz got eliminated in the championship challenge from a mathematical point of view. But why don't we just switch gears to Verstappen versus Norris? And I don't want to go into what happened in Austin, what happened in Mexico, was it right, wrong? But I actually want to bring up a question.
Sure.
Max Verstappen has been compared to Ayrton Senna several years to go. Okay, this is interesting. The drivers' championship battle. Since we spoke of Lando Norris needing 12 points every race weekend, this is a graph which is on our social media pages, which shows every race weekend and how the points has swung between the two drivers. This is made by our friend Nityanand, and it was only in Australia where Lando Norris scored more than the 12 points to Max Verstappen, and that too was a DNF, right? So could a DNF be coming in for Max Verstappen till he actually mathematically seals the title compared to Lando Norris? And the reason why I ask could is not on reliability grounds, but if Max does keep driving dangerously, could he at some point self inflict damage on his own car, leading him to either retire or needing a lengthy pit stop or just
Yeah.
finishing outside of the points?
He's too good for that, I feel. But in my opinion, this is where you need a Valtteri Bottas from Hungary 2021. This is where Oscar Piastri has to be metamorphosized into Valtteri 2.0 with just one clear instruction: make contact on the wheels and make sure that you're ahead of the apex. Take him out, and we'll figure out the rest. Do whatever you have to. Because without a DNF, mathematically, it's starting to look so tricky, Sundaram. And even if Lando has the perfect weekend, the perfect start, the perfect qualifying, no goof ups, like a better weekend than Singapore, which is hard to have, it's still is going to be all washed away if Verstappen just ends up coming third or fourth or second or something like that, because then he's not losing as much as he should, ideally, to lose the
Exactly.
championship, that is.
Exactly. And like Kunal said, Australia is the only race where Norris has managed to outscore Verstappen by 15 points. And Norris needs that, because if Verstappen finishes third or fourth, it's really not helping his cause in the championship. A DNF will really change that in that regard. But the thing is, Verstappen's been quite lucky also, because if he's been battling his championship rival, like how he's done in Austria or in the USA or in Mexico, he's been lucky not to have a DNF as well, because he's pushed really hard and not come out with a DNF. And it's very rare to see a Max Verstappen DNF as well. He's had only three DNFs in the last 3 seasons, all due to, I think, brake issues or hydraulic issues or gearbox issues. Only three of them. The last time he actually crashed out with someone was with a certain Lewis Hamilton back at Monza. So even considering the way he chooses to drive or battle his rivals, it's very rare to see him retiring from a race. But if he does in the next couple of races, I think it's important for Norris that Verstappen DNFs soon rather than later, because it also helps momentum go in his favor, and it'll also put a lot of pressure on Max Verstappen leading into the final race. That DNF needs to come and come soon. And I'm only speaking from Lando Norris's perspective.
I like that you made a reference to 2021 Monza, because what happened then is Max kept having this you yield or we crash approach. Lewis did not yield and they crashed. I'm not going into who was right, wrong, or whatever, and so on then. We've seen this in history with Ayrton Senna, 30 years to his passing away. We're going to be celebrating that. Lewis Hamilton's going to be celebrating Ayrton Senna's legacy. We're not celebrating his passing, similarly, Max Verstappen has been spoken about in the same light as Michael Schumacher, right? In the case of Schumacher, we know what he did in '94 to Damon Hill after crashing his own car a few corners before. For everyone viewing this, this is the title deciding moment when Michael just did not give Damon Hill space, and he had crashed just before and he was going to retire or have a lengthy pit stop and lose the race and the championship, or lose the championship in this case. But he also made Damon Hill crash and retire into his own car. So we've seen this in '94. We saw this in '97 with Villeneuve and Michael again at Jerez. And of course, Michael was then disqualified for the whole season. So I'm not saying Max is going down this direction, but what I mean is the way he's driving, it's just so beautifully surprising right now that he's never had a DNF after 2021 Monza, and despite all the, of course, Austria happened where they touched wheels and he still finished and so on. So we've seen Schumacher do this. We've seen Senna do this as well. Take things in their own hands when they've not had the package to deliver on track, because it's that winning at all cost mentality. And could that really happen to Max Verstappen at some point? Just to answer what you were saying, Sundaram.
And I'd like to bring up a point that Martin Brundle did point out when he wrote his post Mexican GP column. He said that you have more talent in your little finger than the rest of us could have. You don't have to do this. You just don't want to be remembered that way. And I kept on thinking about that. You don't want to be remembered because it's the same thing I've been saying for over a couple of weeks now, and I've been thinking about it. And he doesn't care about how he wants to be remembered. But come to think about it in the long run, just putting a perspective out there, nobody remembers Senna and Schumacher for these things. When we think of Senna and Schumacher first, we think of 91 victories or the numerous pole positions that Senna got in the first place and the amazing wins and battles. It's later when people like us tend to sit down and watch the races or think about the battles that these things come out. But to the broader public, I mean, dare I say, go out as a hero, right? It's, I don't know. It's a legacy is a very subjective thing.
And perceptions do change, because I think when Sebastian Vettel was with Red Bull. I don't think so. I'm sure a lot of people loved him, but then I think he also had his fair share of critiques as well, especially after what happened in Malaysia 2013. He had this bad boy image, but then once he moved to Ferrari and once he moved then to Aston Martin, he became a more likable character, which is what I feel, and he ended his career really on a high. And I think he's one of the most loved drivers. But not many people remember that Schumacher was disqualified in '97 for pulling out a very, what do you say, ill-hearted move, and he finished second in the championship that season. If not for that disqualification, he would have been second. And I think this is a trait that you see in a lot of champions. You see that in Senna. It's also arguable to say, discuss, if was Senna to blame for the Prost Senna clash in Suzuka, or did Prost have something to do with that as well? I think some drivers or some champions tend to have this. I think it comes with that. Uh, with being a world champion, that sometimes you just way too ruthless, and you just want to make a statement by saying that you don't battle with me, it's not going to end well for you.
It's a great point, and it's just some portion of world champions. And if you look at Alonso, very clean. If you look at Hamilton, again, very clean. So there are the other sides as well, and maybe Lando Norris wants to be included in that. That if ever should he ever win a championship, he and McLaren have taken this approach that we will make sure that we will win it the clean way. That's why McLaren are backing his good boy image on track as well. And I think when you think of when you take a step back, what are we trying to say via Formula One? Cars are great, can be economical, sustainable, really quick. There are people in the world who can drive cars extremely quick, on the edge, be precise. But we are also trying to say that you can race responsibly, you can drive responsibly, right? And and if you want to do racing, you do it on the tracks, not on the streets. For example, if, like I said, you take several steps back. But when you have a driver like Max driving the way he's doing, driving irresponsibly, that also sets a bad precedent or a bad example, not just for future racers, but even for road car drivers, I would say, because you're always, somebody tries to overtake you. At least when I was growing up, you're trying to be Schumacher, literally. The next thing, could that be an extrapolation saying, are you trying to be Max by being so dirty with me, even on the roads, for example? But anyway, yeah.
Wait. I need to bring something out here because I might be contradicting one of our sponsors, or rather one of our partners for our on-ground events in Mumbai. Uh, Please close your eyes, Heineken. Isn't their isn't their tagline the most responsible driver or something like that? And the head of their campaign is Max. Just
Because Heineken is Dutch, isn't it?
yes. Because I
No,
remember
no.
Max being on those ads saying drive responsibly. But then those ads shouldn't be played out nowadays. Unfortunately, I just Heineken India is different. I'm pretty sure that won't compromise our business with them.
No, but
Just kidding.
no, but just extending on that point just a little bit more. Sure, if this is how Max wants to drive, sure, everyone has their own style, do or die, sure. But I feel if Max is going to be losing the championship, it's going to be this driving style for now. It's fine if he finishes third or fourth. It's because otherwise it's very, very difficult for Norris to kind of get past that deficit that's there. If he continues to drive like this for the next four races, this could be the reason why he loses the championship. It's okay to say that I want to win every race, but you don't want to lose a championship, then go back saying that what if I'd not pulled that move? What if I'd just, driven a little bit more cleaner? That's all I feel.
Okay, let's talk about drivers who actually have a fight within themselves. And guys, I'd like to pull out this really interesting thing that I found out. In my opinion, Ferrari are going to be very competitive this time. Carlos Sainz said that it might be a bit tricky for them to get pole, but they are very good at the slow speed corners and are very good at managing the curbing. Two of the most important parts of a lap at Sao Paulo: slow speed corners and the curbs. Now, if Ferrari are going to be competitive, it raises a second question: which one of the Ferrari drivers is going to get the job done? Normally, Carlos Sainz was very open to the media when he said that Leclerc is better at circuits where you have lots of stop-start corners because he's just better at making the car turn in some marginal thing. A great piece of insight from him. And Leclerc says he's not very good at qualifying at circuits that have low grip surfaces. Brazil has just been resurfaced, so we're not sure about how that's going to work out. But interestingly, look at the record in Brazil. Let me just pull this up for all of you guys. In Brazil, I am surprised to see that Carlos Sainz has two podiums, one with McLaren, one with Ferrari. But Charles Leclerc has never stood on the podium here across all of his years. In 2019, he had a crash with Sebastian Vettel. 2018, he was with Sauber, so it didn't really work out. Not the best race in 2022, and he did not start last year with the hydraulic issue. And he's never really been at the top of qualifying here as well, which is a weird thing. So I'm not really sure where the tide is going to turn this time out, Kunal.
Yeah, and interestingly, since we know it's a sprint race weekend as well, Brazil has had three sprints and three Grand Prix. So it's not just three races technically, if you were to look at it. It's even in the sprints, he's never been in the top three as well. So
Hmm.
I'd love to see Sainz and Leclerc battle because they've always had streaks. I think Leclerc was out qualifying Sainz five times, five consecutive races, and then now Sainz has been out qualifying him in the last couple of races. And we know Carlos Sainz wants to maximize all he can, with the four races that he's got left with Ferrari. And Ferrari themselves never won a sprint uh, ever in the history of 16 sprint races that we've had before as well. So lots to look forward to. The one thing I'm looking forward to actually is, of course, the constructors' battle because Ferrari are 29 points away. And I think Red Bull and Mercedes have been battling for the constructors' championship and winning it for the last 14 years. Like Sundaram said, it's the return of the old guard. For the first time, we are actually seeing Ferrari versus McLaren battling in a Formula One World Championship. And I think to me, that's beautiful. It hopefully brings older fans back in. When I say older, I mean not only in terms of age, but people who used to follow it back in the Hacken and Schumacher era as well. And
Hmm.
memories as well, because in 2007, 2008, Ferrari and McLaren have been bonkers battling at this particular circuit as well. And it's just that, and McLaren have, I think, the most number of wins out here in 12. So interesting to see how they are going to settle in, because they've had a quick car, but they've not maximized results again. And McLaren's last pole 2012 with Lewis Hamilton, their last win was 2012, I think, Jensen Button. Ferrari's last pole was 2008 with Massa. Their last win was in 2017 with
Yeah.
Sebastian Vettel. So to me, it just goes to show that it's going to be a Ferrari versus McLaren battle. And if it continues to be so, there's so much more at stake than just Leclerc Sainz versus Piastri Norris.
Exactly. We're carrying on a legacy. And this is incredible to see because for the longest time, we all used to dream about the prospect of Ferrari versus McLaren yet again, them racing competitively. And at the start of 2024, I'm not sure any of us would have expected this to happen. But here we are. But, guys, two more things that we need to discuss before we come to the end of this episode. And we are a long way away.
No,
Don't you worry,
wait,
folks.
wait.
I know you're enjoying.
I have to mention a couple of more things since we were
Go
talking
for it.
about Ferrari poles at Brazil. Um, the last Ferrari powered car to take pole in Interlagos was not Felipe Massa, but actually Kevin Magnussen.
Oh,
He's the last
yes.
Ferrari powered driver to take pole around Interlagos 2022, probably ending the end of his probably nearing the end of his F1 career as well. But a beautiful pole lap that he put together back in 2022.
One second. I'm
The other
something
interesting thing is, go on.
on this one second. Is the next point going to be about Haas? Because if it isn't, I want to be uh,
No, no.
finishing the
So no,
loop here.
it's not about Haas. I have two other things to mention. So first of all,
Uh,
maybe it's okay if Charles Leclerc does not take pole position in the sprint at least, because the sprint pole sitter at Interlagos has never won. Three races, three sprints over here. The sprint pole sitter has never won, but it does help being on the front row during the Grand Prix at Interlagos, because only twice in the last 15 years has a driver from behind the front row actually won a race. Kimi Raikkonen back in 2007, and then Lewis Hamilton in 2021. And if Ferrari does do well around this weekend, around this track this weekend, and if they do go on to lead the Constructors' Championship, for the very first time since 2010, we'll have three constructors leading the championship across various points of the season. 2010.
Wow.
That's
15 years
insane.
it's taken that long to have three constructors actually fight for the lead of the championship. That's how long we've had to wait.
That's insane. Wait,
Since you spoke of Haas, Ferrari powered Haas taking pole in Brazil, my mind actually goes back to the fact that Williams in 2010
you
and
read my mind.
Braun GP in
9.
2009 actually have a pole, more recent pole in Interlagos than even Ferrari, because Ferrari's goes back to 2008. So Williams and Nico Hulkenberg, in fact, both Haas drivers, can
Exactly.
have a pole
Exactly.
position.
I think they're the only ones,
Only team.
only
This
team
is
with
only team.
both of their drivers to have pole position here. It's
M-
Yes, indeed.
Mega. This is why people need to be listening into the entire episode, because our gems actually come out after 30 minutes of talking, which is usually Soumil Arora's target time.
and it's interesting because we all came to the same point, just at different points of the light being switched on in each of our heads. Because the point I was wanted to interject with was this, and then you brought it up to that lane, and then Kunal was able to pick it up from there, and ultimately we are all at the same place. That yes, Haas are indeed the only team with both of their drivers having a pole position here, and this is not prepped up. We prepped up a lot for this episode. This is one thing that all of us, I think, ignored, and it's just come up in the spur of the moment. It's yeah, this is why we love the longer recordings. Genuinely, it's so good. But okay, we need to get back to the things we need to finish. I have to act like the producer here, like the boss man. But there is an important point that we all would love to touch upon, albeit a bit briefly, because we also need to go to the cost cap. But Ayrton Senna, 30 years since his passing, we are going to have a tribute this weekend as well. McLaren are going to have the 1990 McLaren car being driven around by an unnamed driver
Not
at
anymore.
Interlagos.
Not
Isn't it
anymore.
this one? Yeah.
It's not unnamed anymore.
Is it not unnamed anymore?
It's just been announced that Lewis Hamilton's going to be at the wheel.
Oh, no way. No way.
I think it's going to happen on the Saturday after the sprint and the qualifying session.
Correct.
Lewis
5 o'clock
Hamilton's going to
local time. Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton's actually going to drive a McLaren before he even drives a Ferrari.
That's true. That's insane. What a sight that's going to be. Hamilton giving tribute to Senna, the new Senna, if you'd like to put it that way, in the eyes of all the Brazilians, at a circuit where both of them have been incredible. I think if you really needed to have competition, you could name this circuit Autodromos Jose Carlos Pache or Autodromo Lewis Hamilton or Autodromo Ayrton Senna, and it would not make a difference really.
I like how you say Pache and then you say Ayrton Senna. Come on, Samuel.
Hey, isn't it? Or Ayrton? Okay, that's intellectual.
Ayrton.
Ayrton Senna.
Ayrton.
Yeah.
It's not Nico Hulkenberg. Oh, it's
Hulkenberg.
not Valtteri. It's not Valtteri Bottas. It's Valtteri Bottas.
But there's some great tributes, right? Because Pirelli has yellow podium caps.
Yes.
And then Pirelli's pole position tire has also got a tribute, which is a Senna tribute, and I think this is beautiful. And we're going to see the return of the yellow and green curbs as well. And in general, everyone listening, when you get the onboard lap of a driver on social media or on TV, just watch it, because it's a beautiful circuit. The funny thing is, the circuit is built on land that was uninhabitable for housing, but the loss for the housing sector is such a big gain for the racing sector, because what's not inhabitable for housing was actually beautiful for racing. So I'm glad we got this circuit. And there is this talk of Rio de Janeiro having a race and alternating between Interlagos or whatever, but I just love the circuit for what it is, because Sector
Yeah.
1, beautiful flow, with all the corners. Sector 2, tight and twisty. Sector 3, again, that massive long straight from the exit of turn 12. And in general, just a lot of history at pretty much every corner of the circuit, every inch of the circuit, whether it's resurfaced or not. just has so much history to it. And my favorite circuit fact is that from turn 10 to turn 6, which is 3.5 kilometers of the 4.3 kilometer circuit, the front left actually just goes to sleep because it's not really working too hard. And that is one of the key engineering challenges. Since Formula One is actually an engineering sport, that's one of the key engineering challenges for every team and driver for their car.
Yeah, and not very heartbreaking. Also, track evolution is going to be big, which means that your tire warm ups are going to be vital, and the way you pull out the final lap in qualifying is going to be key. And if, God forbid, there's a yellow flag, yeah, that's going to mess things up quite a lot. But speaking of caps, speaking of Pirelli caps, we also need to talk about another cap, a cap that has been thrown away slightly or has not been worn properly, if that's the right way to put it. It's the cost cap that we're talking about. And no, there is not going to be any mention of catering. Is a procedural breach. And two teams, in fact, two constructors, two engine manufacturers, have been fined $600,000 and $400,000 respectively. Take a guess. The $600,000 fine went to Honda, and the $400,000 fine went to Alpine. So, yeah, we could make jokes about Alpine messing things up yet again, but Honda's joined them in the party this time too, so they're not alone. But in terms of the breach, Canal, the procedural breach, if I read it correctly, this comes down to declaring slash not declaring the right expenses in the budget that you have to submit to the FIA, right? This is not any case of them overspending the budget that they have or not trying to cheat to gain any performance advantage also.
At least that's what the FIA and the whole process would like us to believe. And I would believe that because uh, F1 being an engineering sport with 10 different teams, 4 different power unit manufacturers having their own setups and own structures, it's difficult to put everybody within a simple Excel sheet and say, what did you spend here? What did you spend there? So, procedural breach literally means that there was an accounting error and how the process of that accounting was followed. It was outside of the financial regulations for the power unit manufacturers because the team started to have financial regulations since 2021. The power unit manufacturers were the cost cap was introduced for them a couple of years. In fact, this is the first year, I think. So it's just one of those. And when I say this, I mean it's for the last year that happened. Okay, so again, Red Bull was in breach. I remember Williams was in procedural breach as well. So teams and now even power unit manufacturers learning what's the correct way of filing their accounts to the FIA within the financial regulations. And of course, yet another controversy, given that Red Bull Racing are powered by Honda. Max Verstappen has won all his titles there. So that does it taint his title? No, I don't think so. In the long run, we are never going to remember it. But it just goes to show that how complex Formula One is. And even though it is so complex, the FIA are actually on top of their game in a lot of areas, even if it is not for adjudicating wheel to wheel racing consistently.
And I think I have a genuine question on this because this penalty is for the engine manufacturers. And but why does it say Alpine and not Renault?
That's a very valid point,
I mean, I
because
mean, I I didn't understand the announcement probably as well because this is also pertaining to a way, in a way, to the 2026 regulations. But then there's also made references of what they were submitting for 2023. So I've probably not completely understood it. But I'm still wondering why does it say Alpine considering we're speaking about engine manufacturers?
I will dig that out and I will come back. It says Alpine Racing SAS. Okay, so I wonder if that's it. Let me dig that out and I can address it the next
Yeah,
time we possibly speak because
because
that's an
because it also
interesting point.
says 2026, but then Renault is not there in Formula One in 2026. So and then it obviously means that it's papers that were submitted or documents submitted for the 2023 season, where they probably delayed certain things or left out a couple of things. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. But yeah, worth
Hmm.
finding out.
Yes, on it.
And with that, folks, we have a point to cover for our next episode. And by the way, we would love to hear from you about this episode, what you thought, what are your observations, what are your bold predictions. And I'm not going to let you lose on this. We really want to know. And there's also going to be a video out on Instagram with those predictions. And we'd love for you to engage with that as you do with all of our content regularly, too. But follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, YouTube, and all your favorite podcast platforms. It's at Inside Line F1 Pod. And Sundaram, you have a closing note.
I have a closing stat. Now, I want the
Ah,
both of you to remember all the races that we've had in America and who the race winner was.
Lando Norris, Miami.
Hmm.
Austin was Charles Leclerc.
Hmm.
And Las Vegas is going to be Charles Leclerc.
No, no, no.
No, no.
In the
Mm.
Americas, in the
Yeah, so
Oh, in the
Americas,
Mexico was
Americas.
Carlos Sainz. Who's going to be in
Yeah.
Brazil?
Canada was Max Verstappen.
Yeah,
So all the races in the Americas have had a different race winner. Who's it going to be in Brazil?
very
You bring
interesting.
that out so late, dude. Like, come on. This is meant to be like a minute two stat. Come on, this is a good one.
I
Ah,
just saw it. I just saw it in my document right now. I just realized I should bring this up, which means yes, Kunal's prediction could come true if we have to go by this trend. We might see an Oscar Piastri win this one,
woohoo.
or a Fernando Alonso. Who knows? Always
I
going to
just
keep
hope he
hoping.
sits in that race car and races okay, because he's
Yeah.
not been well,
Yeah,
and hopefully some Mexican food that probably caught him out. Or anyway, I'm just joking, but
It's happened
yeah.
to Nigel Mansell, so it can happen to Fernando. It's just a world champion thing.
Mhm.
But we shall see. But thank you for listening and thank you for watching, guys. We will be back with you on Monday, where we have the Brazilian GP race review. Bye bye.